What up, Metaverse? It's Travis. Welcome back to Movie Lover 22, the show hosted by Joel McHale that ran for 6 seasons and a movie in a much, much darker timeline. I've seen it. He was really struggling ever since his character got fired from Roxanne. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why did he say his name is Travis? That doesn't sound right. Because I love Fight Club, okay? And Cornelius and Rupert are dumb names. Travis is the only normal sounding one. I saw Deadpool and Wolverine, and I really liked it. I knew I would like it, but I hoped I would like it more than Deadpool 2, which is a movie I didn't even finish. BTW, I will going into spoiler talk, so if you don't want this spoiled, then oops, you shouldn't have listened. Maybe turn this off now and come back after you've seen the movie. Initially, I had a hard time wrapping my head around this movie, figuring out if I really liked it because I had a good time, or if most of it is just referential humor and nostalgia. But, after a second viewing, I can confirm this movie is a lot of fun. See, at first, I wondered if it was only fun because I understood the meta jokes and because Wolverine did Wolverine things. So much of the marketing was, hey, we all love Wolverine, right? Let's do more of that. This movie definitely isn't for everyone. I'm not a comic guy, and I know there are people who won't like the humor that comes with it being a Deadpool movie. I won't recommend this movie to my cousin who likes German body horror movies. You dig? But if you like superhero stuff, you've been keeping up with Marvel and the missteps of the last few years, this movie is a breath of fresh fucking air. It's lighthearted, straightforward, comical, over-the-top violent, and most of the violence is for comedy, and I don't think it tries to do too much with the serious stuff in the movie. And for me, my perspective is from someone who is mostly done with Marvel at this point. I refuse to watch the shows. The only recent movies I've seen are Guardians 3, Spider-Man No Way Home, and Doctor Strange, the almost horror movie, because Guardians were movies that held my attention. I'm a Spider-Man shill 100%, and I like Sam Raimi and wanted to see what he would do. None of the other shit Marvel has been pumping out looks remotely interesting. I mentioned this in my other episode, that they've adopted an even worse formula for the most recent movies, and no one watching them, or even the trailers, seems to notice that they're watching garbage. They seem so eager to swallow the $5 footlong made with ingredients that have been sitting out all day, and I live in Florida, where that would be a real problem. So with that in mind, I went to see this movie on opening fucking night, and I enjoyed myself. Yes sir, I did. I found myself laughing at most of the jokes in the movie, or at least smiling a lot. I'm a huge sucker for referential humor, one of the reasons I love Psych so much, and I get hyped when I notice something, and I want everyone else to think it's as clever as I think it is. Other people in the theaters didn't laugh as much as I did, and some of them laughed far too much at some jokes. Not that they were that inappropriate, but the joke just wasn't that funny to begin with, and some guy is cackling in the back. It was me. I will also say I'm glad I saw it twice. The first time I went by myself to the locally owned theater in my town and had a great experience. But afterwards I regretted seeing it by myself, and over the next 2 days as I started to write down my thoughts about it for this episode, I wanted to see it again, this time with a friend. The big chain theater near both of us had like 10 showings that day, so we picked one that worked for both of us. Except this chain was showing it in their fucking worst auditorium. I don't know if anyone else notices it, but even on other screens at that theater, there's some kind of chromatic aberration that occurs where there's a green border on the tops of words and lines and a red border below. It's very noticeable against a white background, and it's ugly and distracting. The movie was also weirdly dark and constantly flickered as if it was showing a film reel, which I can almost guarantee it wasn't, but maybe the bulb on the projector was in poor shape. And then the third issue, that's right, 3. The third issue was that whenever the bass really hit, like a big isolated boom occurred in the movie, the fucking image shook, as if the projector itself was unstable. When it happened during a shot that was supposed to be stable, like a tripod shot, it was extremely noticeable. Especially since I knew what the image was supposed to look like from my previous viewing in a normal-ass auditorium. Unfucking believable. In a billion-dollar theater chain, it was one of the worst experiences watching a movie I've ever had. Fix your screen and fix your projector. Embarrassing. I elected not to bring it up like a complaint. I didn't talk to anybody because I had no confidence they would care. If that had happened at the locally owned theater, I probably would have found a manager and mentioned it. While these things did constantly take me out of the experience, it did not ruin the movie for me. I mentioned these things to my friend, and he didn't notice anything, but he acknowledged he's not like that. Which is... I know that I'm a little hyper aware of these kinds of things. I know. So, how much of this movie is just going, hey, look, it's that character from that one movie? A good bit, let's be honest. We knew of a good handful, like Sabretooth and Pyro from the old X-Men movies. A few are outright highlights and stay with the story for a bit, but many more moments of fan service happens in super quick succession, and at times were a little overwhelming and took me out of the movie trying to keep up. But it is Deadpool doing a multiverse movie, so I guess that's part of the point. Now, before we get into spoiler territory, let's take a moment and hear from our sponsor for this season of Movie Lover 22. Condominiums. Condos are a great way to diversify your portfolio and get the fuck out of your shitty apartment. Spend more money up front, take on all the responsibilities yourself, go into a little bit of debt, and enjoy your crotchety old neighbors. Condos. Make a better, less stable life for you. Now, let's get into spoilers. 3, 2, 1. Now that they have the money to do a big Deadpool multiverse blowout, they really spent their cash, and this movie was Cameo City. I think I recognized, not everyone, but most characters, I think. Of course, some were hidden, like Blake Lively and Matthew McConaughey as other versions of Deadpool, and others I blatantly forgot about except certain physical features, like a few mutants from X-Men The Last Stand who I never knew the name of, and even some of the other movies that totally slipped under the radar for me, and that's including the ones who were obvious the same character, but were recast. Of course, while I haven't seen his movies, it was also a lot of fun to see Blade come out of retirement, and to include Channing Tatum as Gambit. I didn't give a shit about Jennifer Garner. Elektra is a stain on my movie-watching history, and her showing up was completely underwhelming for me. In the scene of, here are the cameos with more screen time, it was good to get hers out of the way first. Chris Evans showing up as Johnny Storm was also very fun. We've seen him as the pure-hearted Captain America long enough that this character was refreshing and lively, and I, like Deadpool, was convinced he was Captain America initially. It wouldn't have made any sense, but that's what I thought. Sue me. The story worked well enough for me. With finding the one Wolverine who wouldn't be the same Wolverine we've known for 24 years, we'd yet to have a Wolverine who was a failure. It's assumed that Logan would be perpetually the lone survivor, but because of his immortality, not selfishness. As someone who's skipped Deadpool 2, but can assume the plot is I must do X for my girlfriend, just like the first movie, Deadpool's motivations are boring. But allowing Wolverine to serve as the heart of the story, someone who has nothing left except a terrible reputation and the inability to drink himself to death, that person has the opportunity for redemption and in the end becomes selfless, is very compelling. Some people weren't a fan of it. They wanted a more complex Wolverine story since the comics have a lot of stories the writers could have pulled from, but I thought it was just fine and it was presented in a way I didn't mind. And I liked when Cassandra Nova invades Wolverine's mind and he's basically stuck in a never-ending graveyard with distant screams that only grow louder until she tries to fool him with the promise of mental peace. Speaking of the writers, this movie had 5 fucking writers. Not entirely sure why. I imagine some of them wrote jokes and that's it, or were in charge of watching every Fox Marvel movie and saying, okay, and now X-23 can do the thing. It's such a simple movie that one person could have written it, but both Ryan Reynolds and Shawn Levy also have writing credits too, so who knows who did what. At the same time, Shawn Levy is a director who's made a ton of movies, and I've seen one of them, and it's Night at the Museum, which is a perfectly fine movie. And also, I refuse to watch the cheaper by the dozen and Pink Panther remakes. They should never have been conceived. I really enjoyed the montage of Deadpool traveling to different timelines to find the right Wolverine, giving us the short gremlin that comic Wolverine is presented as, and the tease of the Wolverine-Hulk fight that I hear is good, and of course the Henry Cavill cameo being the heavy favorite. I lost my shit as appropriately as possible in the theater when I saw it. It was very cool. The opening credits scene was fine, I thought. A lot of people love it. I see it everywhere. They love it to death. I thought it was fine. The whole Deadpool killing the TVA agents and dancing along to NSYNC's Bye Bye Bye. I didn't think it was anything special, honestly. And at times I thought shots lingered on his dancing for a few beats too long. Other than that, I didn't have any issues with the pacing. This movie is 2 hours long and it moves very quickly. Though, there's a moment where Deadpool makes a joke about the movie being in the home stretch, as if a joke acknowledging a longer runtime makes it any better. Like an unfunny movie commenting on how unfunny movies think that they're great. I liked almost all of the characters, but of course, Wolverine stole the show, with Matthew McFadden shining as Paradox. He's just about flawless. He's a lot of fun to watch. Ryan Reynolds also kills it as Deadpool. I really don't like Ryan Reynolds that much. He's really not a reason for me to watch anything, but it's well known that he adores the Deadpool character and fought tooth and nail for the movies to get made in the first place. So I really don't know who else could have done that except Ryan Reynolds. We have two treats in the end credits. The first is behind-the-scenes footage from the Fox Marvel years, while a song I unironically love, Green Day's Good Riddance, gets the best usage of all time. The actual post-credit scene is Deadpool calling back to Johnny Storm bad-mouthing Cassandra Nova, which ultimately leads to his death. The songs are pretty solid in this movie, not quite as hard-hitting as Guardians of the Galaxy's soundtracks, but it's a very different style of movie, so I don't have any complaints with it. And I think my favorite needle drop might have been in the car fight when Deadpool hits Wolverine into the stereo, and then it plays The Greatest Showman. The actual soundtrack is pretty solid the whole way too. Nothing was noticeably off or phoned in like most Marvel movies that don't have a theme they keep iterating like Avengers, nor does it feel forced. It belongs nicely and fits the tone of the movie, including the emotional moments. I loved Channing Tatum as Gambit, though I was disappointed that we didn't get to see him fight with his staff up close, only his charged playing card attacks. I'd totally forgotten that. Of course, they had to bring in X-23, but it still caught me out of nowhere. I tried to let the movie just happen to me, so it was a good surprise. I largely liked this movie. My issues with it are that Cassandra Nova didn't have much character at all except, I'm evil just because. And even though we're supposed to label her as the villain, I didn't have much reason to think that she is, except other people tell us she's the bad guy. We have zero idea of her own motivations. Outside of that, sometimes the jokes bowled over me so fast I couldn't catch them. On my second viewing, I was able to catch more, but I think more jokes were more forgettable than the first time, which is an issue I had with the first Deadpool movie. Some CGI moments were a little noticeable too, including Wolverine's cowl. I love that they did it. I forgot he even had a cowl until he puts it on before the big Deadpool army fight, but maybe it was the size of the black wings? They seemed a little bit too big, but the eyes were a little off-putting as well. There's a certain level of belief suspension that comes with superhero movies, and Deadpool, especially with the fourth wall breaks and acknowledging Disney and Fox and telling Fox to suck your balls or whatever he said, but arguably more distracting, is just dumb shit no one thought through. Like after the Deadpool and Wolverine fight in the Honda van and they were passed out, how could X-23 get in, turn it on, and drive away without them waking up? Yeah, I get they're tired and all, but that's a hell of a risk to take to steal a van with two very violent people sleeping in the backseat. It's mildly shocking to know that Disney actually made a Deadpool movie, and that Wolverine was in it, and that it was rated R. A pegging joke was in this movie. I appreciate the send-off to all the comic book movies Fox made over the last 26 years. They weren't particularly great movies, or even remotely good, looking at you, Daredevil. But it was a fun yet touching finale to the movies I grew up on. My mom loves superhero movies. She loves Wolverine. Her favorite X-Man is Nightcrawler, though, because he has the best character in X2. But growing up, we watched them. As a homeschooled child, she took my sisters and I on opening day to go see X-Men The Last Stand. I remember it very well. It was like 2 in the afternoon that Friday, and that's what we did. I enjoyed those movies in their heyday, but the rose-colored glasses were never there for me. You couldn't get me to sit down and watch them now, except maybe First Class, but that's because it's actually a pretty good movie. I'm also slightly concerned that this movie won't age well. It's a movie where it's so largely concerned with right here, right now, including very up-to-date jokes like referencing Furiosa, and slang that has only been around for a few months. In a few years, I wonder if this movie will be much less enjoyable because the hype won't exist, and the wow factor of finally having Wolverine and Deadpool in the MCU won't be as grabby. I do hope I'm wrong, but the important thing is that I had fun. Thanks, Marvel. We enjoyed your Peter, for sure. 7 out of 10. I should probably do a little send-off. Hold on. Do I? Okay, here's the send-off. I forgot. 7 out of 10. Go follow my Letterboxd account, Movie Lover Show, and you can send me emails at movielovershow@gmail.com. Bye.